Good afternoon. My name is Paula White, and I am the Senior Manager of Membership Growth for AAPA. Welcome to today's webinar, Navigating the Future, Leveraging Technology to Enhance American Ports, hosted by one of AAPA's newer members, Sercel. Welcome to AAPA's second member-hosted webinar of 2023. We have many exciting programs planned for this year, so if you're keen to learn about additional opportunities to connect and learn throughout the year, please hang around for just a few minutes following the conclusion of this presentation, as I will be happy to share with you some additional ways that you can engage, learn, and network over the next several months through AAPA. Since meeting in person was initially difficult through COVID, AAPA added a new benefit for new members to allow them to host a webinar to present themselves to the members and showcase their expertise and thought leadership. So we are really excited to hear what the experts at Sercel have to share with us today. If you are listening today and you are not a member and you would like an opportunity to present a webinar as a new member, as well as other opportunities to get in front of and build relationships with our port and other supply chain members, I will be sharing my contact information at the end of this presentation, and I will be more than happy to talk to you about becoming a member. We will be happy to take your questions at the end of the presentation, so feel free to post your questions in the questions box as you think of them or when we get to the Q&A section at the end. Now we'll go ahead and get started. I'll first introduce you to our speaker, Todd Neely. Mr. Neely is a port and maritime industry veteran with almost 30 years of professional experience. Out of college, Todd initially worked as an architect for several years before a series of happy accidents landed him in the port industry. He has spent the better part of the past 17 years working with port, maritime, and energy clients around the globe. In 2019, he earned his certification as a Maritime Port Executive, MPE, through the International Association of Maritime and Port Executives. The following year, he joined Sercel as the Director of Port Development, Software and Services for the Americas. In this role, he works with ports, vessel operators, and terminal operators to incorporate digital solutions into their business processes with the goal of improving efficiency, throughput, stakeholder communications, and enhancing sustainable operations. Todd has a true passion for the port industry, but still carries a love for design and architecture, which is evident in his oversized and ever-growing collection of Lego. Todd and his teenage daughter live in Raleigh. Now that the introductions have concluded, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our speaker. Todd, the mic is yours.
Hey, thank you, Paula. Good afternoon, everyone. And Paula, before you disappear, just confirm that you can see the slide.
I can see your slides. You're good to go.
Okay. So we're good. We're good. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate you joining me today. So let's jump into this. It's an understatement to say that technology is pervasive in our lives these days. As we all know, it is slowly making its way into the U.S. ports industry. Slowly. Technology in ports can also be a remarkably broad discussion. Today, I'm trying to narrow our discussion to focus on 4 pillars of technology which are having significant impact on port operations. I'm not going to talk much about technology related to equipment and infrastructure. Those are complex topics in their own rights. The focus today is on technology related to port operations and port systems through the lens of sustainability, digitalization, automation, and collaboration. We'll get to these pillars in a moment, but first let me introduce myself and my company. Paula was kind enough to take care of my introduction, so I don't need to say anything else about myself, but let me introduce you to Sercel. Sercel is the world's leading provider of systems and software for exploring and monitoring the Earth's resources on land, in the energy market, both traditional and renewable sectors, on the seabed, and in the marine environment. The systems and software developed by Sercel over the past 40 years are recognized as the global standard for high-precision navigation and positioning software for the offshore seismic and survey industry. From that legacy of excellence in navigation and positioning, the Marlin application suite was born. Marlin Application Suite is a cloud-based modular suite of applications for vessel operations, offshore logistics, and port operations. It includes 6 key modules, each complemented by our own dashboarding capabilities, which help you visualize, analyze, and optimize your operations by transforming your data into actionable intelligence. One key module, which is particularly relevant to today's topic, is the Marlin Smart Port Management Information System, or PMIS. The Marlin Smart Port PMIS is an integral part of the Marlin Application Suite. It also functions as a standalone PMIS to help ports better manage berth requests, allocations, operations, and vessel services, all while sharing and receiving data from the port's ERP or finance system and terminal operating systems. Okay, commercial's over. Let's get to the matter at hand. As you know, our topic today is leveraging technology to enhance American ports. In broad terms, I'm going to cover these pillars from 3 perspectives. What is happening with technology in ports? What are the challenges technology is facing? And what are the aspirations of the impact technology can have on US and American ports? As I alluded to earlier, I'm structuring this discussion around 4 important pillars impacting port operations: sustainability, digitalization, automation, and collaboration. Individually, each of these pillars are important subjects of discussion and consideration at many ports. And while I present, you're going to notice some of the terms and phrases come up multiple times. Take note of that. I hope to provide insight into the interconnectivity and interdependence between the pillars and technology. Ultimately, I want to make the point that investing in technology can reap benefits across your organization. So let's get to our first pillar, sustainability. The trend towards sustainable business practices in ports reflects a growing recognition of the need to address environmental challenges and impact and build a more sustainable future. By embracing technology, ports can improve their competitiveness, reduce their environmental impact, and contribute to the global efforts to combat climate change. As I said, ports are embracing sustainability. Technology is powering that embrace. First, you can't reduce or improve what you can't measure. Technology is providing the tools and the systems to measure, monitor, and ultimately lessen environmental impacts of your operations like never before. So what's happening in the industry? Today, a number of ports in North America and around the world have initiatives underway to reduce their environmental impact. But for today's example, let's look back in time. 10 years ago, in 2013, the Port of San Diego adopted their Climate Action Plan in 2013, with aggressive goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 10% by 2020 and ultimately 80% by 2050. One of the key guiding principles of this plan was to focus on data-driven decisions. Technology provides both the data and the tools to achieve those goals. According to the port, by 2016, their efforts and continuous monitoring of greenhouse gas emissions within the port area, they'd already achieved a 13% reduction from their baseline figures. So what's technology's role with sustainability? Technology is playing a huge role. As I said earlier, you can't improve on something you can't quantify or measure. Technology provides the means and the methods to measure, monitor emissions through direct measurements, instrumentation monitoring of known emission sources, remote sensing with satellites, and even energy consumption analysis to calculate emissions based on fuel usage. Improvements in technology are also bringing new, more environmentally friendly alternatives to port activities. Recent advances in battery technologies have allowed for widespread electrification of port equipment and vehicles. In addition, wider global ocean carrier acceptance of initiatives like shore power and cold ironing are replacing diesel generators to provide electricity to vessels while in port. There are other important ways that technology can help mitigate environmental impact. It can help eliminate vessel congestion and loitering. Beyond the quayside, Technologies now allow us to look well beyond the harbor on one end and the gate on the other. We can now look at the environmental impact of the entire supply chain, discovering opportunities to implement sustainable practices along the entire logistics journey. Ultimately, this involves greater collaboration. As central hubs of transportation, ports are well positioned to lead. More about using technology and collaboration later in the presentation. So to sum it up, new technologies are being leveraged to increase sustainability in ports. And as you can see, technology is playing an integral part of expanding sustainable operation in port and across the entire supply chain. Our second pillar is digitalization. Digitalization is transforming the way ports operate, creating new opportunities for efficiency, safety, and sustainability. As the pace of digital transformation continues to accelerate, ports that embrace these technologies are likely to be better positioned to compete and thrive in an increasingly connected and globalized world. First, before we dive into the impact of digitalization, let's better define exactly what we're discussing. Often the terms technology and digital technology are used interchangeably. There's an important distinction between technology and digital technology. Technology is defined as the use of proven tools and techniques for practical purposes. Digital technology involves data, the exchange of data, and using that data to better understand your operations and ultimately optimize those operations. After all, the black and white image on the right from historic New England reflects state-of-the-art shipping technology in the 1890s. Technologies, especially digital technologies, are accelerating changes, improvements, and most importantly, more efficient operations with a lower environmental impact. So, what are the digital technologies impacting ports? Well, there are a myriad of systems. There's the Maritime Single Window, which streamlines the exchange of information between government agencies and entities involved in maritime trade. Think custom requirements and customs clearances. There's also a port community system, which, as the name suggests, promotes communication and collaboration amongst the wider port community. This could include port authorities, shippers, terminal operators, and even more importantly, the larger citizenry who live and work around the port. A vessel traffic service, or VTS, uses a combination of radar, automatic identification system data, or AIS, CCTV, and radio communications to monitor and manage vessel traffic. Primary function is to promote safety and marine traffic organization within a defined area, such as a port, harbor, or region. VTS systems are often managed by regional marine exchanges like the Delaware River and Bay Marine Exchange or the Marine Exchange of Southern California. And there are also terminal operating systems and gate operating systems, which manage the movement of individual units of cargo between the vessel, through the terminal, and ultimately out the gate. Finally, most ports have some form of an ERP finance system in place. And then we get to a Port Management Information System, or PMIS. A PMIS serves as the foundational system which can integrate information from all these other digital systems to provide a comprehensive view of port operations and performance. And then there's this thing called a smart port. Smart port is a nebulous term. One of the best definitions I've found is from an article in Port Technology from April 14th, 2021. It says, a smart port is a port that uses automation and innovative technologies, including artificial intelligence, big data, Internet of Things, and blockchain to improve its performance. Yeah, clear as mud, right? Well, that's still a pretty vague definition. What I've generally settled on is that a smart port can be any port that's engaged in its journey of digitalization, regardless of where they are along that journey. And let me just state this, spreadsheets and whiteboards are not digital solutions. So, which American ports are leading the digitalization movement? As you might expect, North America's largest ports are also the most digitally advanced. The Port of Los Angeles is the clear leader, followed closely by the Port of Long Beach. Port of LA has taken a very proactive approach to fostering digital innovation. In 2018, in cooperation with the Port of Antwerp, the Port of LA launched the Port of the Future Hackathon to spur technology-based innovation in the port and maritime environment. Other early adopters in North America include the Port of New York and New Jersey, who have implemented a port-wide digital notification system to improve communications amongst the many port stakeholders. And let's not forget our neighbors to the north. Both Port Metro Vancouver and the Port of Montreal are both pursuing digital technologies to enhance supply chain visibility, data sharing, and collaboration, along with environmental monitoring and sustainability. All this said, digitalization is not just big for ports, but it's a technology which can benefit. Let me say that again. Digitalization is not just for big ports, but it's a technology which can benefit ports of all sizes and operating models. Of the four pillars we're discussing today, digitalization can be the most contentious. There are a couple reasons behind this. As retired U.S. Coast Guard Admiral James Lloyd coined the now famous phrase, "If you've seen one port, you've seen one port." That statement is never truer than when you're talking about port digitalization. The plans and processes for adopting digital technologies and systems that works for one port likely won't work for another port. So while some of the steps taken by some of the larger ports I mentioned on the previous slide may provide lessons learned, they likely won't serve as a template. According to a February 2023 paper entitled Digital Transformation of Maritime Logistics, Exploring Trends in the Liner Shipping Segment by Zhishan Raza and others, one of the biggest challenges to digital transformation in ports and marine industry is a deep resistance to change, coupled with a very siloed functions within the industry. And it's not just the silos within the ports, but it's also silos within the terminal operators, the ocean carriers, the shippers, and the BCOs. Implementing a plan for digital transformation requires strong, committed leadership, coupled with strong change management strategy. Also note, digital transformation is a multi-step process. It can't be implemented all at once. Allow the process, the change to absorb into your organization before you introduce the next initiative. Don't bite off more than you can chew in one bite. Despite the advances in digital technologies for ports, adoption of these technologies, particularly in North America, has been slow. The International Maritime Organization, IMO, issued a mandatory requirement for national governments to introduce electronic information exchange between ships and ports in 2019. This is known as the IMO FAL agreement. IMO mandates often have the same effect of me telling my teenage daughter to clean her room. I can issue mandates. I can issue strongly worded mandates, but the room rarely actually gets cleaned. In late 2020, the IAPA, International Association of Ports and Harbors, and the World Port Sustainability Program published a global port survey to gauge implementation of the IMO FAL mandate. While over 56% of ports were compliant, of European ports were compliant, only 13% of North American ports had complied with the requirements. It's still progress nonetheless. Also, in 2021, it was projected that the global smart port market, or port digitalization market, will triple in size by 2026. That's progress. So following on from digitalization, let's move on to our third pillar, automation. Like digitalization, automation is a big word and can mean a lot of things. We've all seen the equipment, the automated ship-to-shore cranes, the automated RTGs and AGVs. That's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about are automated systems and the efficiencies that can be gained by automated administrative and operational tasks at a port. In the previous section, I mentioned the various classes of software systems within the port industry. Drilling down a little bit deeper, there are really three key system types which can significantly automate administrative and operational systems within a port. First, and really serving as a foundation, as I've mentioned previously, is a port management information system. A PMIS digitally manages the port call request process, approvals, and logs all communication between the shipping agent or vessel masters and the port. In turn, the PMIS can issue notifications whenever important events occur, can issue automatic notifications when important events occur, like a vessel arriving at berth or the beginning of cargo operations. It can also record any provisions or services the vessel receives while in port and share that information directly with the finance department and their systems for invoicing. Then there's the terminal operating system, or TOS. The TOS manages the individual unit of cargo as it moves from a vessel and through a terminal, or vice versa. It also manages yard equipment, manned or automatic, to optimize the stacking and storage of cargo for ease of retrieval. Finally, gate operating system automates the acceptance or discharge of cargo arriving by truck or rail. By automating and optimizing this process, provides considerable relief for inbound and outbound truck congestion, an improvement which greatly helps lower ports' greenhouse gas emissions. Beyond these systems, tying these and other legacy systems together through an integration tool like a PMIS can provide even greater operational efficiencies at a terminal. What's happening in the industry? Ports are deploying systems listed on the previous slide to consolidate data and to automate routine tasks. What are the benefits? It's important to note that automation does not eliminate the human role. Rather, it frees up port and terminal staff to focus on more important activities and staff. It also eliminates the need for multiple data entries, reducing the chance of errors and typos. So let's look at how technology can improve ports operation through systems automation. For a typical port call, this is the process. First, the berth application and all required paperwork is managed and recorded in the PMIS. This allows the port to plan the berth and subsequently notify all the parties involved in berthing and working the vessel automatically. Schedule changes and delays can be updated in real time, keeping everybody abreast of the actual schedule. Provides for a much more efficient use of labor and port resources. Documentation is handled digitally as well, reducing the need for multiple data entries, which can substantially reduce the chance for errors, particularly if you type like I do. Services can be ordered and logged, simplifying the invoicing process at the end of the visit, as well as providing a running tab of the charges so there are no surprises when a vessel is ready to depart. Finally, all the details above are logged and can be sliced and diced and easily produce reports, as well as identifying areas of your operation that can be further optimized. System automation can have enormous benefits for ports, automating the mundane tasks so that you can focus on the important. Now the final pillar of our conversation, collaboration. The word collaboration has come up a couple times already today. If you look back at some of the other pillars we've discussed, you'll find that opportunities for collaboration are one of the key byproducts when introducing any new technology into ports. Technology can tear down operational silos within an organization, provide verifiable data and statistics, which can be shared and benchmarked against others, as long as you're willing to share. We all learned in kindergarten, sharing is key. Operational transparency is creating an environment which can foster and benefit from collaboration. Ports historically have not been good at sharing. As a matter of fact, until recently, many ports jealously guarded information about their operations. Technology has changed that. Many details which were once protected as confidential trade secrets are now available through open sources. I mean, for instance, I can download a free version of marine traffic on my phone and track vessel movements all over the world. Technology has made data and information much more widely available. And that data and information is increasingly driven by new technologies which drive collaboration. One of the barriers to collaboration previously has been regulation. You must remember, there's a fine line between collaboration and collusion. Collaboration is good, collusion is bad. With more information and data freely available, the Federal Maritime Commission, FMC, has taken a much more agreeable stance on port collaboration in recent years. This new, more open attitude first came to light almost 8 years ago in 2015 when the FMC approved the formation of the Northwest Seaport Alliance, combining the cargo operations of the ports of Seattle and Tacoma. While the Northwest Seaport Alliance was born from a realization that the two ports and the constituent communities are much better served by an alliance rather than being bitter competitors, it laid the framework for technology and the sharing of data that was to follow. In 2017, the Virginia Port Authority and the Georgia Ports Authority entered into the East Coast Gateway Terminal Agreement. This collaboration was much more focused on sharing data and information on systems and operations rather than a combination of cargo operations like the Northwest Seaport Alliance. The East Coast Gateway is grounded in sharing best practices. To share best practices, you must have data and statistics. Data and statistics come from technology. And much like we talked about with sustainability, you can't improve what you can't measure. Technology provides those measurements, and ultimately the data is the fuel that powers collaboration. Another example of even broader collaboration, the Northwest Ports Clean Air Strategy of 2020 not only includes the ports of Seattle and Tacoma of the Northwest Seaport Alliance, but also the Port of Vancouver, British Columbia. This represents not only a regional approach, but binational as well. According to the Port of Seattle, the strategy, which started in 2018, 15 years ago, was the first of its kind in the global port community. The collaboration has been diligent over the past 15 years, and they've revisited the progress and their goals multiple times. The strategy recognizes the uniqueness of each port, allowing them to make changes and institute policies which are suitable for their operations while sharing best practices with the other constituent members. It also provides a consistent framework for measuring and monitoring the progress, recognizing that greenhouse gas emissions rarely respect legal boundaries. And it's working. This really demonstrates the interrelationship and the interconnectivity of the four pillars that we've talked about today. So to wrap up, think about that last example. The Clean Port Strategy began 15 years ago in 2008. 15 years ago, Apple launched its first iPhone. 15 years ago, the biggest topic of conversation in the global shipping industry was the potential or proposed expansion of the Panama Canal. Let's think about the advances in technology the port and the world has seen in the last 15 years. Vehicles and equipment adhere to much higher emission standards. Battery technology has grown by leaps and bounds. Digitalization. In 2008, digitalization of port operations was in an embryonic stage. Today, port digitalization is an increasingly popular topic, albeit difficult to say sometimes, with ports of all shapes and sizes embracing digital systems and solutions. And once again, spreadsheets and whiteboards are not digital management solutions. Finally, collaboration. As an industry, we're continuing to realize that we are in a very competitive market, but we also have a lot that we can learn from each other. We've come a long way in 15 years, but we're not done. So I discussed the four pillars of where ports are, where ports are and can leverage technology to enhance American ports. Identified four pillars where technology is having a significant impact on port operations: sustainability, digitalization, automation, and collaboration. With the examples cited, there's a clear, considerable overlap of these pillars on one another. I'm fortunate to find myself working with a company whose solutions sit at the crux of these four pillars. I want to thank you all for your interest today and your attention, and now I'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay, so we do have a question. Let me pull up the question box to pop it out a little bit so I can actually read it. Their question box is a little bit funky.
You want to borrow these?
It's their question box. It's a little bit. Let me see if I can pop it out so I can actually read the whole thing. All right, let me. It's not popping out, but I can scroll. So, how do cybersecurity concerns affect digitalization and automation? How will ports, terminal operators, or terminal owners, carriers, and vendors need to collaborate to ensure cybersecurity needs are met?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I mean, again, going back to that example of kind of where we were in 2008, cybersecurity wasn't even a thing in 2008. Or if it was, again, it was in its infancy. Adhering in the port environment, for better or worse, we're governed by a lot of regulations and government standards. And in the United States and in Canada, the Coast Guard of both countries have come up with some pretty rigorous standards to protect data security, to prevent accidents, incidences, cyber crimes. That's going to continue to evolve. Unfortunately, I'm afraid cybersecurity is a topic that will be at the forefront for a long time. It does provide the security of redundancy, because particularly with cloud-based systems and applications, you've got built-in redundancy, so that you don't have a failure like you would if you did have an on-premise server that crashed or died or received a virus. So there's a lot of positive elements that are being looked at with cybersecurity, but it's definitely a topic that everybody involved in port digitalization is very concerned about.
For sure. I have another comment and question. Hi, Todd. Nice presentation. This is Jack from Baird Associates. What size or how much traffic is needed for a port to have a digital-based vessel management and reporting system?
Well, Jack, thank you for joining today. There's not really a minimum size. I mean, it just depends on a digital vessel management system can really be scalable. And it can scale either up or down depending on the vessel traffic you have. So it's really not a size requirement. But you need to have a clear view of what you're trying to achieve with the management system, what role it's going to play. One thing to note that systems like VTS are also engaged in managing vessel traffic, and that includes giving direction to mariners. A lot of ports want to be able to monitor vessel traffic, but don't want to take on the added liability of actually giving direction, which, if there's an incident, it could open them up to a lot of legal liability. So you need to be very clear and clear-eyed about what you're trying to achieve, what level of engagement you want in the process. And a lot of times, if a port is in an area that falls outside an area that's covered by regional VTS, they may just want something that will help them look at what's going on and be aware of vessel activities, rather than putting themselves into the position of directing those vessel activities.
Okay, great, thank you. Not so much a question, but just one of the attendees wanting to say hello, I guess. Thank you, AAPA, Paula, and Mr. Neely. Have to duck out. Josie from Accipiter Radar, just wanting to let us know that he was there. So always nice to have attendees say hello. Thank you so much. It looks like he left, but nice to have Josie say hello. Next question. With your experience, what is the difficulty for ports in adopting the digitalization pillar?
Well, and as you just proved, first you have to be able to say digitalization.
Yeah, I have a tough time saying that word. You can't tell. that digitalization, the two of them are both tough for me.
Yes, yes. The challenge is really, like I said in the presentation, digitalization is a lot about change management, and nobody likes change. And particularly when you start talking about automating somebody's work tasks, people get a little squirrely, and they get a little nervous. But so it takes strong leadership, push this, but also you have to have a change management strategy. I mean, we're beyond the days of of just, taking a CD and loading new software on your system. These are much more complex and integrated systems than we're used to. They're going to have a tremendous amount of benefit. And to be honest, the younger generation are somewhat more comfortable with it than some of us who've been in the industry for a while, because they've grown up with these technologies. Again, I just randomly came across that fact that the first iPhone was launched in 2008. And that's, and we think about how ubiquitous iPhones are, today in all of our lives and everything we do. So it's going to be difficult, and there are going to be challenges, and there's going to be resistance, but it can be overcome. And ultimately, I think the benefits of overcoming those challenges will outweigh the problems that it may create internally for short term.
Yeah, very true. Gen Xer here, so I definitely identify with that point about technology. A couple more questions. Could be a governmental task, the development of public policy about use and implementation of clean energies over port services. That's how it was phrased. I know
Can you hit that one more time?
Could it be a governmental task, the development of public policy about use and implementation of clean energies over port services?
It could be. Internationally, globally, it is a government policy perspective. I know in the UK, the government is much more directive about port operations and sustainability and climate change activities. In the United States, and to a lesser extent Canada, we don't necessarily have national port requirements and port programs. Like I said, I quoted the Admiral, if you've seen one port, you've seen one port. That's very true in the United States. And the operating models, the operating organizations, everything is vastly different. So again, I suspect in countries where there is more of a central control basis of government, you're going to see some governmental policies. I don't think that's going to be as strong in the United States. I think here it's going to be more of individual recognition and acceptance that, okay, we need to do something. What would work best for us? And again, the Northwest Clean Air Strategy, perfect example. They realized that the emissions in Seattle and Tacoma were crossing over into British Columbia, and vice versa. Their emissions were crossing over into ours. So you could do everything you wanted to do in Washington State, and it still wouldn't matter if you're getting emissions from the other port across the international border. So you have to work together. I think once people begin to, like I said, accept some of these realizations that it needs to be a larger strategy, you're going to see more collaborations like that. But I don't know that a heavy-handed government approach it would necessarily be the right solution.
And speaking of collaboration, how do you get past the protectionism of terminals not willing to share information?
Well, again, so much information. I mean, arrival and departure schedules used to be somewhat confidential. Now everybody publishes them on their websites. And like I said, you can, anybody with a smartphone can get marine traffic and find a vessel anywhere in the world. I think a lot of that, again, it's the attitude that's changing about collaboration. The East Coast Gateway Agreement really was kind of groundbreaking in 2017 when it was launched, because it was the first time. I mean, it's, Virginia and Georgia, they do compete for cargo, but they realized that there's enough cargo out there that they can better serve their communities, their states, what I call their constituent audiences, by collaborating and sharing best practices so that they can all do things better. They're not getting into, and it does specifically state, they can't discuss shipping rates, anything like that that involves the commercial aspects of their operations, but they can discuss best practices for sustainability, for technology, and for equipment. And so I think, again, it's a growing understanding that type of cooperation is very valuable. And I think ports are beginning to see that example, to learn from that example, and hopefully we'll see some other collaborations like that, around the country and around the world.
Yeah, that would be great. Hope we see that for sure. Where do you see the automated processes ending up?
Well, ultimately, a lot of it, it's going to end up integrating machine learning or AI. There's a lot of talk about AI these days. Concerns that that we may be creating the Terminator. The computers may turn against us, machines may turn against us. I'm hoping we're a long ways from that. But as far as automating processes, and especially repetitive processes, they're also often involved in a lot of the operations and administrative duties. AI can play a very valuable role, and I think it will increasingly play a valuable role. But the system only knows what we teach the system to know. And so it's going to take time from the solution provider side, but also the ultimate users, the ports, the terminal operators, to get comfortable with it. And again, there's a lot of anxiety and angst and headlines about AI these days, but ultimately, I think that's where we're going.
Yeah, yep, sounds like it. Nimrod Simeon from Port Miami says, greetings, great presentation. The implementation of digitalization is the same for Port Authority and landlord ports? It's a question.
Oh, no, it's not. Because they have different objectives. For operating ports, they've got different challenges and metrics and KPIs they're trying to achieve that vary from a landlord port. They also have different responsibilities of what their job is every day. So, again, it goes back to you've seen one port. No, it's not the same for operating in landlord ports, but some of these same systems can be used. The configuration and the implementation might be vastly different. And like I said, some of the other ports, and kudos to Miami. Miami, I should have mentioned you guys. Y'all have made some good progress with technology and digitalization as well. But the bigger ports that have maybe stepped a little bit further at this point, there's some lessons learned, but just because of the nature of their operations, they can't really serve as templates, because there is a Port of LA, and nobody else in the United States, not even Long Beach next door, quite operates like the Port of LA. New York's the same way. I mean, New York, with its various tenant terminal operators, is a very different operation than the Port of Virginia or the Port of Georgia or the Port of Houston. So it's difficult to have a one-size-fits-all approach, and that's important when you're talking with folks and trying to kind of define the path that you want to go down.
Great, thank you. Another question. The Inflation Reduction Act directed approximately $3 billion toward port electrification initiatives. What else should policymakers do to encourage adoption of technology at ports, especially smaller ones?
Well, between the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Act, as well as the grant programs that DOT has right now, there are a lot of good things out there. Unfortunately, the money for port electrification, that is truly for equipment. That's for electrifying equipment. That's for basically turning in, your diesel run Caterpillar reach stacker and getting a Tesla, battery operated reach stacker. Although Tesla hadn't gotten into that market yet, but who knows? Monies need to be available for technology. And I mean, if you look at some of the projects in the scope of some of the infrastructure and equipment projects that these ports are undertaking, they're massive. I mean, we're talking, saying $1 billion is not, out of the realm when discussing budgets for these. For a fraction of that, technology can make at least as strong, if not a stronger, impact on efficiency, sustainability, and productivity. But monies need to be directed for that or to that. And, for better or worse, government funding always comes with strings. But some of the strings are also guardrails. And for instance, some of the money in the Inflation Reduction Act can't be used for port technology or for digital technologies. So they need to kind of loosen up the purse strings a little bit on the digital side. And another thing, kind of stepping back from the federal level, but even port authorities, well, ports, terminal operators, and port authorities, they don't necessarily understand the process for buying digital solutions, and they don't have a process in place. Ports can go out, they can hire a building contractor or a dredging contractor or an engineer. They've done that hundreds of times. They know that process. When you're implementing, like we have a PMIS, it's a different animal, and it requires different contract language. It requires a different contracting approach. And it's that, again, that's one of the challenges of implementing digitalization. So yeah, I would applaud more federal funds and more federal funds specifically directed. If we haven't run out yet, we might be, but they need to be able to, be inclusive of digital technology, not just equipment in concrete and steel.
Yeah, great point. Which challenges have to recognize Port Authority to prevent any incident regarding attention process of MASS, the Maritime Autonomous Surface Ships?
Okay, I'm sorry. Go back to that one more time.
Sure. Which challenges have to recognize Port Authority to prevent any incident regarding attention process of MASS, the Maritime Autonomous Surface Ships?
Okay, I'll be honest, I'm not as well versed in the operations of autonomous vessels. And I apologize to whoever posed the question, because I'm not exactly clear on what you're asking. But autonomous vessels, even though they may be running without a crew, they still have some of the same transponders and communications equipment that any vessel would have. So they're going to be transmitting an AIS signal. They're going to show up as a target on a radar, and obviously they can be seen by closed circuit TV or technologies like that. We're not seeing on a commercial scale, we're not seeing a lot of autonomous vessels yet operating anywhere in the world, and so I'm kind of at a loss for a better answer at this moment.
That's okay. Appreciate your answer. I think there's still a lot to learn and to know about that subject. So yeah. That's all the questions I've seen so far. But that's we've had a lot of questions. Appreciate the engagement of the audience. That says a lot about your presentation, Todd, that they've been very interested. The asker of that question says, thanks a lot, Mr. Neely. So he appreciated your answer as well. So I think that's about it. Do you have any concluding remarks, Todd?
No, I was just, well, in my contact, I'm assuming you can still see the screen.
Yes,
yeah.
You still see
yeah, here's my contact information. And if anybody does have any further questions, I'd be happy to engage in a conversation. And I'd be real happy to engage in a conversation about some of the systems and solutions that we offer. So I appreciate everybody's time, attention this afternoon. And yeah, thank you.
Well, many thanks to our speaker, Todd Neely, for that very insightful presentation and for taking the time to answer the audience's questions. I hope all of you feel like you gained some helpful insights from today's webinar. Before you sign off, I hope you will hang in for just a few more minutes so I can share some upcoming events that we have that I think may interest you. So let me just steal the presentation from you, Todd, and
Okay.
share my screen. Make another presenter. Okay. I'm going to show my screen so I can share. Is it sharing my screen yet?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I am showing you AAPA's website. If you go to our website and then click on AAPA events, you will see all of our events. I'm just going to really quickly just run you through the events that we have for the rest of the year, because if you're interested in our speakers' content and educational events and possibly networking opportunities and visibility opportunities, you might be interested in other opportunities that we have coming up for the rest of the year. We still have a little over half a year left. It keeps switching on me. So our Port Administration Management Conference is coming up in just, like 2 weeks, from June 6th and 7th in San Pedro, California. And this is a newer event. It's combining what were previously a few separate events. It's covering legal, finance, real estate, public relations, communications, workforce development, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So kind of everything that you might need to know if you are a port administrator or manager. So it's a really good event to attend as a port leader, or an up and coming port leader. If you want to be a port manager, anybody who is perhaps a PPM student or candidate, or somebody who's wanting to participate in any of our PPM or PPX or the PPA programs, that would be a good event to participate in or consider participating in. Then we have our Smart Ports Seminar and Expo, which is coming up. We talked a lot about smart ports today. So if you participated in this event today, you might want to participate in our Smart Ports Seminar and Expo that's coming up July 19th through the 21st in Boston, Massachusetts. That event is also combining what were previously 3 separate events, involving like three of our technical committees, our facilities and engineering committee, our security committee, and our information technology committee, and their formerly separate seminars are now combined into one large event and expo. So we'll be talking about things like smart ports and digitalization. A lot of the things that we talked about today are going to be talked about in more depth at that event. So I would highly encourage you to check that event out. The agenda is available on our website. So I would highly encourage you to check out the agenda for that program. Then our annual convention and expo is going to be taking place October 22nd through the 25th in Aurora, Colorado. That's where the Denver airport is. So pretty much that's like our annual homecoming. Most of our port members attend that event. They've got their annual membership meeting where they do voting on our bylaws or voting on the new board members. So a lot of our port members are in attendance. We have an expo. So there's exhibiting opportunities, sponsorship opportunities for those of you who are on the supply chain side or the service provider side. It's a great opportunity for networking and visibility with all of our port leaders. So that's a really good event to attend. And there's lots of education opportunities as well. And then the last event of the year is our AAPA Latin American Convention of Ports, which will be December 4th through the 6th in Barranquilla, Colombia. So if you do business in Latin America or want to do business in Latin America, that's a really great event to attend. It's about the same size as the annual convention, and we get about 600 or 700 people at each of those two events. So great networking opportunities at both of those events. And then lastly, I'll just remind you that participating and conducting, hosting one of these webinars is a member benefit. So you do have to be a member to be able to host one of these webinars. If you're not a member, I'm happy to talk to you about the benefits of membership. There are lots of other benefits, of course. You have access to our 130 port members and our 200 industry solution provider members and our supply chain partner members as well. Lots of opportunities to network and participate on our technical committees. So I'm happy to talk to you about the benefits of membership and how you can get engaged and network with our members. My contact information is here. My name is Paula White. You can reach me by email or by phone. I'm always happy to talk to a potential member. Or if you're an existing member and you want to host a webinar, you've never done this before, you want to do it, or if you just want to talk about how you can get more engaged and learn more about the benefits of membership, you don't think you're getting a whole lot from your membership, or you're new to your company and your company is a member, but you want to get engaged yourself, feel free to reach out. So that's it for me for the presentation. Thanks again to Todd and to our audience. For Todd, thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. To our audience, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. This has been wonderful. Thank you.